Welcome back, YouTube. Today I'm going to walk you through a video of 5 common mistakes that you need to avoid when you're looking at getting a fat loss response. So these are the do nots of fat loss. These are things that I've seen work with many different individuals over a lot of years. Things that happen quite commonly that stop people from getting the results that they're after. And when we fix these things, change these things, people start seeing much more progress and the results that they want. If you do enjoy the video, you find it helpful, please drop a like. If you have any questions, throw them down below. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. Let's go. Okay, the first one, restricting food intake heavily. Okay, so in this one I mean really restricting food intake where you're not eating a lot at all. Now, restriction of food intake on some level is going to be needed because we need to create a calorie deficit to drop body fat, which means taking in less food than we're burning. Okay, so we are going to have to reduce that food intake to a degree. However, restricting it heavily has the potential to backfire. Now, you might think if I restrict food heavily, therefore create a bigger deficit, I'm going to get a faster and better fat loss response. And that isn't necessarily untrue. Okay, yes, if you restrict food quite a lot, you might get more of a fat loss response, which might sound fantastic. However, if you are managing a lot of different factors away from food intake, that can easily become an issue pretty quickly, because you might find stuff like hunger management becomes hard. You might find stuff like energy gets very low. You might find stuff like sleep starts taking a hit. You might find stuff like recovery starts suffering, and therefore training performance starts suffering. And when all these things come together and start becoming an issue, you then might find it very hard to remain in a calorie deficit and continue to get the progress and the fat loss response that you're after. And therefore it might just backfire and long term actually stop you from getting the results that you want. So finding a sweet spot of where your food intake is at a place that you can manage and feel good off, but you're also still getting a very decent fat loss response that you're after, finding that sweet spot is important. Number 2, doing cardio only. Okay, now when it comes to fat loss, we've got to understand that fat loss means reducing weight from body fat and therefore holding on to and or potentially slim, adding muscle mass, right? When we understand that, things within our goal that then contribute to adding / retaining muscle mass are then important, right? Cardio, in terms of a form of exercise, doesn't help with the retention or adding of muscle mass. Now, if you enjoy cardio, I'm not saying don't include it, and it can be useful for general fitness levels, aerobic fitness, conditioning, and again, helping towards that deficit in fat loss. But if cardio is all you're doing, you're not then doing a lot to help retain and add muscle mass. So what I would suggest is that you also then potentially look at including stuff like resistance training / weight training on some level to help do that, right? Because when people go through a fat loss goal, in their head they have this picture of how they potentially want to look, and that often requires a certain level of, muscle mass. And if people aren't doing things to help retain / add muscle mass through that process, then when they get to that end result, they might not have the results that they had pictured in their head. Number 3, simply doing too much. A lot of people, when they start their fat loss goal, get very excited. Obviously, they're hyped to go. They want to get in great shape. They end up throwing almost everything at it, right? They might go from have done nothing to maybe doing 4 or 5 weight training sessions a week. Maybe on top of that, they've got a couple of cardio sessions in there. Maybe even they've got classes. It's not unheard of some people to be doing 2 classes a day, one in the morning, one in the evening. And again, this is almost similar to point number 1, right? Initially, you might think or find that you're getting a great response from that. You might find that you're seeing good results pretty quickly. But what it has then the potential to do is backfire. Again, in a very similar situation to point number 1. You might find very quickly that you're getting tired very easily, low energy, not recovering very well, quite sore quite often, training starting to slow down and not progress anymore, even maybe regressing and pulling back. you might be finding in general that you're burning yourself out. And then when that happens, once again, we're really going to struggle to continue seeing progress towards our fat loss, and it might just stall altogether. Okay. Secondly, if you start with everything up here, when you do need to progress things moving forward, you'll have no room to progress things because you've hit your ceiling. Whereas if you start down here, all of a sudden when you need to progress things, you have room where you can move up, right? So if we go all in, it has the potential to backfire, burn out, plus we don't have any room to progress things. So what I'd focus on doing is starting with the minimum effective. And what that means is you're starting with the least amount where you're still getting a response that you're after. Okay, so you're doing the minimum while still getting the fat loss response that you're after, because then when things start stalling, like I said, you then have a lot of room to play with where you can progress things over time, continue to get that fat loss response, and eventually get the end result that you're after. Number 4, cutting out certain foods. Okay, now the reason why this is an issue is because, one, most importantly, we need to be able to enjoy our nutrition, our diet, what we're eating. If we don't enjoy it, we're not going to adhere to it long term, okay? Which means we're not going to stick to the targets that we have set, and therefore we're not going to get the progress and results that we're after. Secondly, there is no reason to cut out a certain food because there is no food group or food item alone that is going to stop you from dropping body fat, okay? So there's no reason in itself. Thirdly, if we do cut out certain things that we enjoy, we're likely just going to end up craving them more, and eventually that could backfire where we eventually just go all in and smash the hell out of it, right? So I think if we think about cutting foods out, it doesn't really lend or lean towards a good relationship with food and ourselves, right? So we have to be careful with it. But overall, it's just not needed. Now, obviously, we probably do have to have some responsibility and moderation and control over certain foods. We all have certain foods, trigger foods, where we can smash a bag of them pretty easily or whatever it might be. So yes, responsibility, moderation and control is important, but complete elimination is not necessary. And then number 5, the last and final mistake, is not prioritizing your sleep. A lot of people underestimate the importance that sleep has on their goal. Sleep plays a big role in lots of different little factors within your goal, right? Sleep will have an impact on your hunger management, it will have an impact on your food intake, your energy expenditure, your mood, your training performance, your recovery, the amount of the weight that you lose coming from either fat mass or muscle mass. It plays a lot of different roles on a lot of different factors, okay? Now, in this day and age, sleep gets put down to the bottom of the priority list because we have staying up late being important, we have gaming being important, we have watching TV being important, we have going out being important. And this isn't me saying that you have to take sleep up to number 1 and everything else has to suffer, because obviously we still want to live our lives. But if you're looking for a very, very good fat loss response and the best results, we can't be putting sleep at the bottom of that priority list because we will suffer and we will make our goal 10 times harder than it needs to be. The amount of times where I've worked with someone focused on improving that sleep routine and they tell me how different it makes their goal in their life and to become easier and feel better is crazy, okay? You have to start prioritizing your sleep, getting into that good routine if you're wanting the best results possible. So there you have it, 5 mistakes to avoid when it comes to fat loss. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please drop a like. If you have any questions, throw them down below. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.